Hi everybody, Lee here. Thank you for watching or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. I have a very, very special guest with me today. She is the Senior Vice President of Learning and Human Resources here at TTCU Federal Credit Union. Let's welcome none other than Celia Armstrong.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, Lee. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's been a while. And like I said, thank you for coming on and being a part of leading. So let's just talk about you for a second. So how long have you been in HR or in this space?
So in human resources, I've been in this field for 34 years.
Wow.
34. I started when I was 2. No, I started when I was 18, fresh out of high school.
Wow. And so what drew you to human resources?
Such a great question. So fresh out of high school, you know everything, right? 18, you know absolutely everything. You have all the decisions made. And so I worked with this in the state of Florida, and my mother at the time had been in personnel. That's what we called it in the day, was personnel. And she said, Celia, there's an opportunity at the Department of Environmental Regulations for a file clerk. I said, sure, let's give it a try. So I started in July of 1986, 87, as a file clerk. That was my very first job in personnel.
So, that's so interesting. So your mother was in the field, and so that kind of influenced you and pushed you towards the field and kind of brought you into that space. That's so interesting. I think for me, one thing I've learned in my own life, a lot of times our parents leave nuggets for us to show us where we can go, what's possible. And even with leading and just talking with people, I find that there's some things that my grandmother did and my parents did as far as leadership and stuff like that kind of has influenced how I have gotten into this space or just talking with people about certain things. That's cool. So you've been in this field for 34 years and you've been consistent in this field. And are you originally from Florida?
So not really. So I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and my father, still alive, but can no longer fly planes. So he was a Delta pilot, and my mother was a Delta ticket agent.
That's so cool.
It's a Delta family romance, right? And so we moved from Atlanta to Houston, and then that's where my sister was born, and so we've been all over really. So Florida for the majority of my young life.
Right, and so those experiences of being in different places, in the time that I've gotten to know you, it seems that it has informed you a lot. Like you are great with people. I've never met somebody so great with people. It's an amazing thing. And I just, in the process of getting to know you and meeting you literally within the last year, I see that there's some intentionality about how you go about engaging with people. So today we were talking about, the business of people. I just kind of want to know from your perspective, how important is it for leaders and just people to understand people, or how necessary people are to any organization?
It's beyond critical. Yeah. It's beyond critical. Culture of any organization is going to be different, organization to organization, right? Culture is completely different. But the culture begins with one relationship at a time. Yeah. One at a time. And individually, you have to understand that person. We have 456 people in this organization, and it's important to me that I understand every single one of them. That's my responsibility, right? Because I've been the person, the file clerk, that people would step over because I was in the way filing, and they may not have seen me that day. But let me tell you something, every single person in this organization, any organization, regardless of what they do, is just as important as the other. In fact, I remember a story that I tell managers all the time. It's a story about an individual that worked at NASA at the time when we put the men on the moon, okay? And the story was that they had some HR people come through and do a survey and say, so what do you do and what do you do? And they talked to engineers and astronauts and computer programmers and all those different things, right? And they'd explain all these different things. Well, they talked to a young lady who was part of the cleaning crew. And I said, so what do you do? And she looked at him and says, I put a man on the moon. Okay?
Perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's perspective, right? They understand their role of how important it is, no matter what you do for an organization. And it began early on in life for me, because the way that I grew up, I wanted to make sure that the challenges that I faced as a young person, okay, would help me move my life forward. and allow me to relate to people when they're struggling, personally or professionally. When an organization needs focus on employees and try to find a direction, it's important to understand people and be able to relate. It's critical.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. I think one thing that I'm finding, or it reminded me of a story that one of my mentors shared with me about his grandfather. And he said that when he was a little kid, his grandfather, he owned car dealerships. And he told me how his grandfather literally would, wear a suit and tie every day. He would drive into the dealership, and he would actually bring him with him. And he said he used to make him wear little suits,
Absolutely.
This 4-year-old boy wearing suits. And he was telling me that, like, literally his grandfather would literally drive onto the lot, would park his car at the front of the lot, and literally go to every single person that worked at that building and speak to them and remember their names and talk to them and engage with them and ask them about their families. And he said that made such a significant mark on his life. And it makes me realize that, like, as it relates to the subject of leadership, we can have that type of access to people when we are willing to engage them. So just kind of staying in that vein, is there like a strategy to engaging people in a authentic way, or is it just people just have the gift? Like, is there a way for people to do that, especially in their leadership?
I think that has to be something that you want to do.
That's
right?
true.
It can't. It's not something I can say, Lee, you're a new leader, and you may be nervous talking to people or trying to engage people, but guess what? Now you're going to have to. It has to be a desire to do that, and you talk about that innate ability to connect with people. Okay, and a lot of that is life experience. It's not about age. It's not about professional experience. It's about life experience. Okay, and the more that you engage with people, the greater and deeper your life experiences become. And as a leader, as a human being, you have to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Okay, and you have to be open to say, right, I can learn, I can be better, I can grow, I can improve. And so I try to really encourage anybody that is a new leader, an experienced leader, to remain humble, remain open, and remain vulnerable.
Those are great principles. I will be using those and stealing those.
They are yours to use.
Definitely. That's very, very powerful. So when it comes down to hiring and looking for candidates, like, what are some things that you look for? What are some things that comes to mind when you're going into that interview, or you have somebody interviewing talent? How do you gauge that or look into that?
I have always been a believer that it's about the who, not the what.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about what do we need as an organization in our employees. And you know where we're from.
Yeah.
And you know what our mission in life is, right? And it's to serve our members. It's to serve the community. It's to serve each other. And that takes a servant heart.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
It does.
So,
Yes.
we have a phenomenal training department. We'll train the functionality of the position.
Which I want to be a part of. On the low.
Absolutely, right? So it's all about creating those opportunities for people who sought us out because it's a match for them. And I write new employees a welcome card, every single new employee since I've been here.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always tell them is thank you for choosing us. Because I know it's a choice. It's a choice.
It is.
It's even in a very tight economic or an employee market, right? It's a choice. And I know that they chose us. And that's something that has to be honored and respected and treasured.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great answer. It made me think for a second about how, even for me with coming to TTCU, how just didn't even know at the particular time in my life that being exposed to financial literacy and understanding financial leadership and all those different things were so many things that I did not experience or had context for had I not come to TTCU. And it's been very interesting for me just to see how the company has evolved and grown and just the different kinds of people. But something I wanted to share with you. So, I'm getting my master's right now. There's a particular. Thank you. The funny thing is the class that I'm literally in right now is called Human Capital and Talent Development. And I thought it was so funny because it literally made me think about just what you do, and even in the hiring process, like figuring out, okay, what does the company need? One of the things that we had a discussion in class about, I think it was a few weeks ago, was trying to recognize what you said, what the company needs, and not allowing the fact that I like this person to get in the way, because I have a bunch of visionaries on my team, but I need people that are administrative. But I keep hiring visionaries because we like the same things and we talk about the same things. So how do we encourage leaders to really move in that direction, hiring what they need and not necessarily what they like?
And a lot of that takes back to what I talked about, being vulnerable. Okay, if the leaders of the organization trust the HR department to come sit down and have conversations and say, my department needs. And one of the first things I tell them is take the people out and talk about what you really need in this department or in this organization. Then we start talking about the who. And it really is having that conversation with each of those leaders to understand their vision about that department, and then saying, we've got some great solutions. And it's a partnership. One of the things I want everyone to remember, especially in the HR department, is that we are a support organization. We're a support department. If I can get it out right. And that means that we're supporting each of the managers and we're supporting each of the employees. And so it's really getting to know each of the employees and getting to know the department so that we can have synergy in creating the culture together.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it made me think about how an orchestra would not be fun to listen to.
Correct.
If they weren't different.
Correct.
But they all were playing together to make one sound. And I think as you were talking, it reminds me of how important it is for us to, like you said, know what we need and then build from there when we're considering candidates for anything. I know even with leading, one day as it grows and I do different things, I'm going to have to make decisions on hiring people maybe.
Correct.
I'm going to have conversations with people about what I need and what I'm trying to accomplish with leading. And if I'm not cognizant of, okay, what do I need? And I'm just like, oh, their resume is amazing. Because I know me. I would get so caught up in someone's resume and what they do that I literally will forget. Like, Lee, you need somebody to make sure you're not spending too much money right now, because you know yourself. But anyways, enough about me. We're talking about you.
I like talking about you.
So one thing that we kind of touched on or just kind of discussed a little bit before is how technology is changing a lot of industries, and how it is influencing how a lot of industries go about hiring people. Can you kind of speak to that dynamic, because it's such an interesting one, and I know you probably have a lot of experience with that, especially right now with what's happening in our company.
Right, and I think it's such a great dynamic that every organization has to be very sensitive to. Okay, it's extremely important, and the reason it's important is because we need technology to live. We need technology to connect with our family members, especially now. We need technology to get money out of the ATM. We need technology to post transactions for our members. We need all that. We have technology that keeps us informed and engaged across the organization. But the most important thing that I have guided every superintendent or president that I've worked for in all of my years is you can never allow the technology to ever take over the relationship with the employee. The technology is a necessary efficiency, a necessary tool of the organization, but nothing, in my opinion, is more important than the relationship with the employee. It's a part of the relationship. It's part of processing payroll and benefits and evaluations and a job application and even interviewing through Teams. I mean, it's part of our everyday life, but it's a supplement.
Yes.
It's a supplement.
I
It is
totally agree.
not the one and done.
Yes, ma'am. No, I totally agree. It's been something that I literally have had so many conversations internally and just been thinking about how, like, I think we kind of forget this one thing, that like a person created the technology. So it takes human capital and human ingenuity in order for us to actually be beneficiaries of a thing that's been created. So if we don't have people involved, it's kind of like,
Exactly right. I couldn't agree more.
That's a great way to really think about human capital. So what are some ways that, just in your opinion, what are some ways that companies can really try to focus on preparedness and continuing to push people towards other positions? Because some things are going to get eliminated. It's just for efficiency reasons. It's based on cost. But how can companies or leaders really evaluate that idea of, okay, I don't want to cause people to lose their job, so how can I move them to another place?
So I'm glad you asked the question. And one of the things we've been talking about internally is career pathing, but I like to say career passions. So, it's one thing to teach a person how to do a job, which we certainly can do. But at the end of the day, it's about what employees love to do, what people love to do. If you love what you do, and you've heard this, everybody's heard it's not a job anymore, right? Yeah. So as roles change within an organization, if you understand the knowledge that you have in your employees, the experience that you have in your employees, and also their passions, then what a great opportunity for an organization to say, yes, we need new positions, or we need a different type of position. Great, because we have that within the family, the way I look at it. And you said something earlier to me that I want to expound on, and that was, you talked about an orchestra. Well, I use the example of my daughter was in choir. Okay.
I was in choir too as a kid.
I loved it.
In high school.
In high school, and my daughter, she was in high school, and I'm not going to tell you how old, she's 30 this year, last year. And so it's been a few years since I watched choir, but one of the things that I loved is that there were young women and young men from all different social, economic, geography, backgrounds, family experiences, cliques and different passions and ideas, and they got up there in their robe, they opened their voices, and it was one collective song. And that's kind of the way I look at an organization, the same way. We're all from different backgrounds. We all have different raisings and different experiences, both professionally and personally. We have different backgrounds, experiences, but when you all sing together at the same purpose, the same mission, there is beautiful music that's being made. So you said that earlier, and it was just a perfect analogy that I use often, and I just wanted to be able to say that because it was perfect timing.
Yeah, that's on the money. I think that it's important, like you said, to really look at passions within people. One thing that I thought was really awesome when I first came into TTCU was that we prioritized StrengthsFinder, yes. Which is so interesting because in college I had to take the StrengthsFinder, obviously, but just taking it again and realizing that, there are just certain things that I'm just born with. Right, innate. Innate ability that I have the capacity for, and I can use those skills to actually be more productive and more efficient in my job. So while staying in that space, how can leaders, even not just it may not be that they are the CEO of the company. They may be just a manager of a department or a manager of a particular group of people. How can they intentionally understand those skills and empower their people to do their jobs at their maybe respective branches or whatever, the store or whatever? Exactly right.
And it's such a great question because you don't know until you get to know your employee. That's right. Good. So if you're not engaging and you're not creating intentionally, love the word that you use, and it's so powerful. Intentionally get to know your employees. You want to know what drives them. You want to know what strengths they have. And what better than me to sit down with you, Lee, and say, Lee, what are your strengths? What do you love? What empowers you? Yeah. What drives you? What challenges you? What makes you grow? And then my question back to you, because I have a responsibility to say, how can I help you?
Yeah.
How can I help you grow?
So true.
How can I challenge you? How can I support you? So, we can do StrengthsFinders, and we can do some assessments, and we can look at job descriptions and position specific competencies. You can do all of those technical things, but again, it comes down to getting to know the employees and your colleagues and your coworkers, because I feel like everyone in this organization is my coworker.
Yes, ma'am. And to your point, something I think Kyle and I talk about all the time is people come alive when they're given the opportunity to be themselves.
Powerful.
And I don't know why that is something that I feel is so important for people to understand, even about this subject, as we're talking about just the business of people. But I literally feel as if people could only do what is in them to do, life will be so much more fulfilling. And I know for me, even though I don't work in learning, I often find myself, and I probably have been doing this over the last few years, I've been finding myself just randomly asking people, like, what do you like to do? Like, what are you passionate about that has nothing to do with your job? Like, I know this is what you work on, but like, what do you care about? Mm-hmm. And it's been such an interesting experience hearing people talk about themselves. And we interviewed a friend of mine who's a business owner, and she literally said, Megan Pinckney was like, people love talking about themselves. I was like, if that's not true, if there's no truer statement than people love talking about themselves. And you're right, it's leaders taking the responsibility and recognizing that they have a role to play in the development and growth of the people that they're leading. So I think this may just be an issue within some leaders. Some leaders feel as if their greatest responsibility to their people that they're leading is production in their job and getting the task done. How do you encourage leaders to balance that? Because I think a lot of leaders struggle with that. They struggle with, well, I have to meet this deadline and we have to get this product out. We have to do this. Like, how do they balance that from your perspective?
And I think that's a very difficult position to be in. And I can absolutely relate to that from a perspective of every manager, line supervisor, regardless of where you work and what your goals are and what your production goal, whatever those goals and requirements have to be met, whatever those are. At the end of the day, it amazes me that people who feel supported, empowered, believed in, will do the impossible. Okay, so we can, and I've always been a believer to say, I'm gonna be transparent, say we do have some deadlines.
Yeah.
Okay, it's important, right? We have to pay people, and people would like to have their paycheck, and benefits would like to.
I love my paychecks.
I think right. So
I need them.
and you have the right to and that's the point is that we are here to serve our members, and there are deadlines and things that we have to make sure that we get done. And at the end of the day, the people love what they're doing. And if they feel supported, if they feel like that they are trusted, our number one core value, they feel like they're being trusted, and they feel that they connect with their leader in a very real and intrinsic, powerful way, they will do the impossible, and they will feel as if they have accomplished mountainous tasks.
Yes. That's so true. Collective action has caused a lot of us are beneficiaries of collective action in some way, shape, form, or fashion in our culture. So I'm getting towards the end. So let's talk a little bit about the future. How can leaders engage their people in decisions about the future? Because I think, I don't think anyone starts a business with the intent of them closing it down within a year or 5 years or even 10 years. Right. What are your thoughts about leaders trying to engage their employees in decision making and also how to shape where the company can go?
And I think that's such an important discussion topic, and part of it's strategic, but the other part is really a leader to say, I don't have all the answers. We talked about vulnerability before, and a true leader is able to sit at the table and say, team, I don't have all the answers. Here's my questions.
Yes.
Okay? I am great at asking questions.
Yeah.
I have not all the answers.
Yeah.
But if you involve your team, all of your employees, in where that organization's going to go, they are part of that journey. And it's so important to sit at the table and say, we have enough knowledge in this knowledge bank to make some unbelievably tough decisions to ensure that we are going to be relevant in the future. And whatever that is, whatever that strategic goal is to be relevant to whomever, or to open another piece of your organization, or to grow your business by X%, who better to ask how to do that than ask your teammates?
Yes.
You have to be secure enough to ask the question.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true. And there's a lot of insecurity in those conversations, because there's a fear that I think some leaders fear that if they ask their team questions, their team won't believe in them and where they're going and what they can do. But to your point, it takes a lot of humility to say, okay, I don't know everything. And it made me think about, I don't know if this is factual or not, but I heard somebody talk about, there's this quote from Ronald Reagan. He said, someone asked him about, how did he build his team or pick the people that was in his cabinet? And he said, I hired my weaknesses. Correct. And I was like, I don't know how to work a camera. So I hired my weakness, because I don't know what to do here. Like that, all I know how to do is talk, but there's somebody who knows what they're doing. And so I think that's such a phenomenal encouragement for leaders to be, like you said, be vulnerable. I think that's been a running thread through this whole conversation, is for leaders to be vulnerable and recognize that their vulnerability attracts the answers. And I think that's just a great way to look at it. So as we wrap up, I kind of asked you earlier about what just music. I think music is a powerful thing. I love music. I do too. And so what song would you use to describe yourself, and like why?
So I would say my favorite song that maybe describes me would be actually from a movie, Braveheart. Okay. And it's actually the scene where William Wallace's father dies and they're burying him, right? And the young girl that eventually becomes his wife hands him a thistle, okay? And the reason that's important is because most people see this as a weed along the highway, but it's not. It is from Scotland. And the reason that's important is because my grandfather would say that was his favorite flower, okay? So my grandfather, and the reason that's important to me is because of how much he means to me. And anybody that knows me knows the story behind that. And the reason that I collect elephants is because of my grandfather. Wow. But the thistle, and when I first saw the movie, and the reason it resonated with me, I cried quite heavily in that scene because it meant an enormous amount to me. So I can hear it in my ear today, but not a whole lot of people know that. So that's something I've not really shared with except anybody but my husband. So. Well,
it'd be shared with the world. It'd be shared with
that
everyone.
That was a tough question, Lee. That was tough. Thank you.
No, I think it tells me a lot about you, and the opportunity that I've gotten to know you over the last, like 7 or 8 months? I mean,
it's almost been a year because we met at back to school.
Sure did.
At Sand Springs.
Mm-hmm. And I remember it like yesterday, and I am extremely grateful for everything you've done for me since I've been at TTCU, and just the contribution that you made to even my education. But it is truly one of the things that impacts employees in a significant way. Going back to what one of my mentors said about his grandfather. I bet some of those people that are still alive today are grateful for what he did because he was intentional. And Miss Celia, you have always been intentional. No matter if I stay with TTCU another year, 10 years, I will always remember these moments where you, as a leader, went out of your way to be intentional with me. And like you always say, pay it forward. I will pay it forward because someone was intentional enough to say, I'm going to make an investment into your life. When you know that, like, I didn't know where that money was going to come from for my last class, but I am so grateful, and it blessed my life, and it really blessed my family. And I want to say on the video, thank you. And I so appreciate you. And I will forever remember that. That is something that, and I think leaders have to understand they have the power to do that, where they can make an investment into someone's life and it propels them to where they want to be. And I don't know, in this moment, it just made me think about, and we're going to wrap up, but I feel like I need to say this, but it made me think about how much, whether you realize this or not, you are a teacher in a lot of ways. You have the heart of a teacher. And I do believe this, that every teacher has been the person that propelled a president forward, propelled astronauts forward, propelled doctors forward, somebody had to teach or train that individual to be the person that they are. And so I thank you. Number one, thank you for doing this, but thank you for being a teacher for me in a moment where I needed that. And 20 or 30 years from now, I'm gonna be like, Miss Celia, I literally, if I see you in 20 years, I'm gonna forget where I am. I'm like, Miss Celia, I'm gonna come and hug you, and I wanna thank you, because that is what people need. And I think when it comes out to this idea of the business of people, or just investing in people, you have done that. So I just want to make the public service announcement. Thank you, Miss Celia.
First of all, having people in my life who have blessed me when I didn't know where the next gallon of milk was going to come from, or how I was going to pay rent with 2 babies, single mama. It's important for me to say we all help each other. And it was a divine moment. And I've shared this with you, that when I heard your story, that was a personal opportunity for me to pay it forward. So thank you for allowing me to honor the opportunity to pay it forward.
If you learn nothing else, pay it forward, people. Please pay it forward. Please pay it forward. But once again, thank you for doing this. The last thing I want to ask you, how can people connect with you or reach out to you, or get in contact with you? Because I think that people should get some of this greatness.
I love connecting with people, and you know this about me, Lee. So I'm on LinkedIn. Of course, you can reach me here at TTCU at Armstrong at ttcu.com. I'm happy to listen to anyone. I love meeting people, and I just appreciate the opportunity to share stories with you.
Thank you for watching or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. I hope that you were inspired, equipped, and empowered. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe today. And to get updates about all the things that I'm doing, connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. I hope that you will tune in for the next episode of Leading with Lee. Much love, and let's get started.